Welcome everyone to the 40th episode of Thinking Out Loud. I'm amazed we've done this many podcasts. It's honestly been a blast doing these. I love having people of all stripes on and gaining their perspective on things. This is especially true for this episode. We have Nate Talks to You on. He's well known for his YouTube channel in which he discusses religion and culture. He recently made a video debunking some claims made by Ben Shapiro, and will be uploading a video shortly to address some of the criticisms that video has garnered. You can also find him on Facebook and TikTok. The links to all of this are in the description of the video below. We have a conversation today about how to promote atheism. He proposes some things that have never even crossed my mind. If there's one topic of conversation that I think still deserves more time in the sun, it's the topic of atheism. I don't think it's time to shift our focus just yet. I think we need to continue the fight against religion, and hopefully, this podcast illuminates why that is. Anyways, hope you enjoy the video.
Shut up and sit down.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Thinking Out Loud. As always, I am your host, Vincent Freeman, joined by my good friend, Bruce. Bruce, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Glad to be back.
Yeah, and we are joined today by a special guest. He's produced very popular videos out in the past discussing atheism as well as discussing culture. We are joined by Nate Talks to You. Nate, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
It is so refreshing to talk about atheism again, because these past couple of months, when I first started this channel, its main focus was to talk about philosophy, main philosophy geared towards the atheist content. But you sort of get hijacked based on what's happening in culture today, and you feel kind of compelled to talk about those issues, give your 2 cents. And so it's nice to really be going back to my roots, which is atheism and secularism, and talking about, you know, the faults of religion. My introduction to this whole intelligentsia scene, I guess if you want to call it, was through the new atheist movement back in like 2014, 15, when I was in high school. And the sort of and your YouTube channel is one of the first that I came across, right? So it was like you, Cosmic Skeptic, Sam Harris, obviously the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. And so what led you towards atheism in the first place? What made you want to construct your YouTube channel? That question always fascinates me when it comes to asking like pop, because everyone seems to have a different answer.
So as far as getting into atheism originally, I was raised as a Methodist Christian. And I remember going to Sunday school and everything from around the ages of maybe like 6 to maybe about like 10 or 11 years old. But I remember around the ages of like, let's say 14, 15, I began discovering the atheist community here on YouTube. And even before discovering the atheist community, I think that I always had some more agnostic leanings, because there were things in the Bible that just didn't add up to me. And I always kind of pushed this to the back of my mind originally as a kid, because I just, trusted the people around me to just, go along with what they said. But then I began hearing people in YouTube videos echo the ideas that I already had and kind of, building upon them. And that just further reinforced my agnostic views until it pushed me like around the ages of 15 to 16 all the way into being an atheist.
That's very interesting, actually. I started off similarly in the sense that I was first an agnostic my senior year in high school. So this was the introduction into, because I was raised Catholic, and the reason why I never left religion was because I was horrified of death. And to some extent, I actually still am pretty concerned about death. Not because I'm scared that I'm going to feel pain or anything like that, but because I'm scared of, as Christopher Hitchens wisely put it, you're basically tapped on the shoulder telling you the party's going to go on and you have to leave. That's what I'm concerned about. And I first did the agnostic route because it was, I didn't have like a hardcore Catholic family. We were, as Ray Romano put it, we were just like a Christmas and Easter Catholic family. That's only when we went to church.
I was kind of that way too in a lot of ways, but anyway, go on.
Oh yeah. I mean, I feel like that's what most people are. Like most people don't actually read their texts or anything like that. And so, but it was like I would watch religious apologetics videos. So I read the works of C.S. Lewis, and I watched videos with William Lane Craig because I wanted my faith to be solidified. I was worried about losing it. And what I always say is that it was Richard Dawkins, he was the first person that I was introduced to in the whole atheist scene. He was the one that convinced me to be an atheist. And then it was Christopher Hitchens that did the final blow and convinced me to be an anti-theist. And so and then obviously I watched atheist YouTube channels. And I want to ask you, we're going to get onto the topic of how to promote atheism itself in a bit, but I like these preliminary questions first to get a grasp of what our thoughts are on. What's the difference between YouTube atheism back then? Because you're like old school. You're back from like 2014, 13 atheism, and the scene sort of shifted. What do you perceive the difference to be between YouTube atheism back then and YouTube atheism now?
So yeah, I mean, this is my personal experience. I could just be kind of experiencing some bias on this part, but it seems like the atheist movement back in like 2010, 2011 was a lot edgier. It was more independent creators. You know, we had people like The Amazing Atheist, Non-Stamp Collector, but it feels like the more prominent atheist figures on YouTube today are trying to go for a much more clean-cut professional vibe. I think the likes of Rationality Rules and Cosmic Skeptic and GM Skeptic, those are like the big players that I'm currently seeing in the YouTube sphere. And yeah, I am happy about that. I think that around 2013, 2014, there was this era where atheism was beginning to be considered cringe. You know, there was the whole fedora tipping meme, the neckbeard meme, and I feel that YouTubers like the ones I just mentioned are kind of pushing back against that stigma and giving again a more clean cut look to atheism again. Not that that's the only way you can do it, but that is one way of going about it, which I like.
Was it because of a lack of professionalism on their part, or do you think like it got cringe because I mean, you hear from theists at times that there's some of these atheists tend to be what's the term, aggressively, I'm slaughtering here, but aggressively atheists are just very, they're always on the attack. They're angry people, etc. And you think it got really cringe because it just went over the top with edginess?
I think it was a combination of factors. I think it was in one part due to, like more moderate atheists or just religious people on the internet trying to like intentionally develop a negative stigma against atheism, and some of their, memes and propaganda worked effectively. Like some of these like fedora and neckbeard memes I've seen online, they're not actually from a real atheist. They just like find an image of a guy wearing a fedora and they superimpose text onto that picture and then say, oh, this guy's an atheist, and that's not actually true. But there are examples of that. I know that like the Reddit community of atheism has gotten a negative perception over time, and that's played a role in it because some of those people, there's nothing wrong with, I think, being militant in your atheism, but some of them don't have the best optics. Yeah. They don't know how to argue their points effectively. They just come off as being kind of socially awkward. And I think that you need to have, well-spoken, persuasive people at the forefront of the movement to be like that positive face. If you have these people that are acting cringy, whatever you want to call it, that's going to just, destroy the entire organization.
Yeah, there seems to be this association at the time with atheism and sort of like the 9gag memes that you would see that were anti-religion. So that was wow, Jesus, 9gag. But that's the question, right? So now there seems to be a conversation about whether or not atheism is relevant in the sense that, and that's going to lead us into the conversation for today, is it still relevant in the sense that it still needs to be promoted, right? So the question is, did atheism basically win at this point? Because you no longer see people pushing for creationism or teaching intelligent design in the academy. And that's only in the academy, right? So the conversation seems to be different at this point. And whereas like among popular commentators, like whether we're talking about Jonathan Haidt or Paul Bloom or Sam Harris or the Weinstein brothers, the conversation is no longer, does God exist? There's still some people that you see trying to argue for it, like Ben Shapiro, but generally speaking, in the academy, like in the university system, that conversation is no longer being had. Now it's whether or not religion itself is useful as a tool, as a social mechanism. That seems to be the conversation now. And so, like, if you look at polls, right, I think philosophy departments are like 80% atheists. It's like overwhelmingly, and especially like STEM, the National Academy of Sciences, is like 92% atheists. So even when you look at the general public, like I think yeah, we both live in the United States. 72% Christian still, which is the only first world country that is predominantly religious. It's that would be my argument, where it's like, well, yeah, in the United States, at least, atheism still needs to be promoted. There's still some stigmas. I think the most recent polls showed that people still don't trust atheists to be in the White House or to be in any congressional position. And so, but this is funny. I always catch a whiplash whenever I see someone religious, because pretty much all my friends are atheists slash like anti-regressive. We think very similarly, right? But we grew up together and we never talked about this sort of stuff. So it's not like we sort of conditioned each other to believe the same things. I never talked to my friends about like religion or about culture until like when I was already at the university, and we just so happened to agree with each other. But whenever I come up to someone that I don't really know and they tell me that's like, oh yeah, I'm going to Bible study, and they're very religious, it's sort of like a whiplash moment for me. Like, oh yeah, the US is still overwhelmingly religious, and it doesn't, and like, because I'm in the academy, or at least I'm trying to get into the academy, right? I go to university. Religion, like no one talks about it. It hits me by surprise. So my question is like, do you think like this conversation is still relevant, or should we now focus more on the religion as as a social tool? Is that the new conversation?
I will say, until atheists are the majority in this world, it'll always be relevant.
Mm-hmm.
That's my standard right there. And in a perfect world, I would like the entire planet to be atheist, because I think that religion, at its core, like fundamentally, my main motivation for promoting atheism is because there is simply no evidence for a God existing. That's the main motivation. But on top of that, I think that religion has a net negative impact on the world. Sure, there are some positives. There's the whole community argument that people put out there. It can make some people feel better, but I think there's always a secular substitute for any positive you can ascribe to religion.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, yeah, it is fantastic that we have the intellectuals in this country that are in support of atheism. They're not religious people, but at the end of the day, they're the minority. The intellectuals are the minority, and the people who are voting in this country, the average common man, they're the ones who vote. They're the ones who end up, deciding the policy in this world. So we need to get them on our side as well.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And we're all in agreement here, right? I think
Mm-hmm.
based on what you just told me right now, it seems like you're an anti-theist, right, as well?
I'm not sure. Like, I used to use the term anti-theist, but I think that kind of implies that you're anti the person who's a theist. I
Mm-hmm.
prefer the word anti-religion nowadays, because that's my core issue right here. Is like the religious organization, the religious structure. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
against the person. I want to help the person move away from that religion. I don't want to attack them.
I mean, it might be premature to state this, but it almost feels as though that we're on a downhill slope from here, because I attended the FFRF in San Francisco about 2 years ago, and like there was I think it was a congressman there who was an open atheist, and as we know, the number of nuns, of religious nuns, of people with no religion, is growing in this country substantially, and there's an unspoken warning out there that you ignore the irreligious at your own peril. So I would say it's still necessary to argue for atheism as well as for secular values with respect to that, because as people become more and more irreligious, they will want, I imagine, to have someone in the governmental bodies to represent that opinion. And as we promote that in our institutions, it will only hasten the atheistic view in society. I don't see it going in any other way at this point.
Yeah, I have said that before from Pew Research, that yeah, the religious nuns in this country are growing, but I think we do have some pushback to that. I think we're seeing some pushback to the secularization of America. The prime threat right now I see is Donald Trump, because he panders heavily to the evangelicals in this country. He's trying to get rid of Roe versus Wade,
Yes.
and that's why I'm going to be. I know everyone says that Joe Biden is cringe. I agree, but I would say he's the only thing that we have to push back against Trump. Unfortunately, I don't see any third party candidate winning. So our best bet is to vote for Joe Biden, and hopefully we can have a bit more wiggle room to further atheist activism. With Donald Trump, we're simply not going to be that politically viable for a while.
Yeah, that's true. And so I think that's the solution to this whole idea of why is it so hard for an atheist to get into Congress, to get into the Senate, to get into the presidency? Absolutely. Well, because for all we know, like for all we know, a good like 20 to 50% of the people in power are actually atheists, but they're not going to say it out loud because they have constituents to address, right? For all we know, Donald Trump is an atheist. He probably is actually based on how little he knows about religion. But he has a constituency, right? He has the evangelical vote in his hand. So there's no way he's ever going to say anything even remotely close to atheistic. So
Yeah.
if we manage to convince the majority of the population that religion is bonkers, then we effectively change the government system right there. I mean, you see that similarly in Australia and in the UK, where there are openly atheist people who are in power in the government. So now the question is, well, how do we promote atheism then? Because people have different avenues for it. Some people go, as you mentioned, the amazing atheist. He's very, rambunctious, I guess, for lack of a.
That's the thing, is that I think there is no like one perfect way of promoting atheism. I think some people are more receptive to a more edgy firebrand method like the Amazing Atheist. Some people are more receptive to a more calm, calculated, cosmic skeptic type approach. So I'm going to be showing the PDF in just a moment. These are just a handful of tips and tricks that I've come up with. This isn't like the end all be all, like the final how to guide. Just a couple of things I think that we should invest time into attempting and see where it can go. And if it
Okay.
fails, then it fails. But if it works, then yeah, we should keep trying that. So
Cool.
yeah, I'll do the screen share feature right here. Oh, there we go. So the first thing I noticed about atheism online is that there are like three key places where we have the most popularity, let's say, on the internet. I think of YouTube. For a long time we've had like a massive movement on YouTube. We're popular on Facebook. Like Atheist Republic, for example, has a massive YouTube Facebook page, and also on Twitter to a degree. I see there are some popular figures there as well, and maybe a bit on Instagram here and there, and of course we have Reddit. But outside of those handful, I don't really see a major atheist community anywhere else. So the first place I think that we really need to start like branching off into is TikTok. Because for one thing, it has been the most downloaded app of 2020. Lots of people are moving over there. Along with that, again, it has more active users than Twitter, Snapchat, and Reddit. And I think that we are greatly limiting our outreach if we're not trying to branch off into more popular platforms where other people are that may not be aware of our kind of message. Along with that, TikTok, from what I've seen, is very popular among the youth, among the Zoomers. And they're the people that we really need to reach because they're the ones who will be carrying the flag when we're gone. We can't do this forever. We need to have new people actively coming in to keep spreading our message. And they know what the younger kids are into. They know all the popular memes, all the popular fads. They're going to be more adept at promoting it through these different cultural shifts than we will be, because eventually we'll be old and we'll be cringe. So along with that, TikTok is very easy to produce content. I believe that the limit for videos on TikTok is like 2 minutes long or something. And most of the videos on there, from what I've seen, are just like like the vertical smartphone type videos. They're not like heavily edited content. So yeah, it's very easy to just make a humorous little like humorous video and then just put it up there and hopefully bring in viewership. One thing we could also try doing is, I'm pretty sure you can like take clips from YouTube videos or different debates and speeches and then put them into a TikTok video. I'm not sure. Are you familiar with a YouTuber called Vosh?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I know
Yes.
that he had a massive growth in his YouTube channel recently because somebody took clips of him during a debate, put it up on TikTok, and then over the course of the next week or so, he got I think 50,000 or something new subscribers from TikTok. So that's just one example of how you can grow your YouTube community by branching off and trying to reach these TikTok kids. And last but not least, there are examples of Christians and Muslims effectively, promoting their own message. And they're not going to go away. We don't want them to have the majority over there. We need to have our own base in these communities. Otherwise, we don't have much control. So one example, I'm sure you've heard of Pastor Greg Locke.
Right.
On Twitter, he doesn't seem all that relevant. I think on Twitter he has like 60 to 64K followers. He's massive on TikTok. He has 500,000 followers, tons of likes. His videos do pretty well. Some of these are averaging, 40K, 50K views. He has a massive outreach over here. Where is the atheist community on TikTok? I think that Armin Navabi has a TikTok account, but beyond that, I'm not seeing many other YouTubers trying this thing out. And then along with this, there's also Muslims on TikTok. Let me see if I can get that to pop up. Can you see that now?
Jesus. Yeah, this is like a whole world that I had no idea about.
So this video is essentially saying, atheists are dumb because they say that you can't see God, therefore God doesn't exist. But you can't see your brain, therefore your brain doesn't exist. And it's like, I've seen that around for so long, but it's like, yet you can see your brain through X-rays, through a CAT scan, through various methods. But this is a compelling argument in the realm of TikTok. You can make very low effort arguments and get a massive following here. This video has nearly 400K likes. And this account, Queen Saf, nearly 300K people are following her.
These are like religion 1.0 arguments.
Basically, yeah. And people are buying this stuff. And I'm not seeing any atheist community pushback over here. And I find that frustrating. What are we doing?
So they have a substantial body over there because there's no one to pretty much just better arguments. I'm like, that's the argument she's just making there is basic. If you're initiated into the atheist community.
Yeah, from what I've seen, that the Christians and the Muslims have essentially a monopoly over there on TikTok. If you look up the atheism hashtag on TikTok, every video that pops up is a Christian trying to debunk atheism. You rarely see any atheists countering Christians over there. So, I mean, if we want to stay relevant, we have to transition over to the newest, most popular platforms and try to recruit other people to our side because they're going to do it before we will.
Right. Isn't there a conversation about whether or not TikTok is going down under because of China?
I know that is, I was going to mention that as well. I know that some people might be a bit wary about that because, TikTok is run by a Chinese company. It may be taken down pretty soon. If you're worried about the surveillance aspect of it, I would just say, get a VPN. You'll be safer that way. I think you'll be fine if you just go with that route. As for it being taken down, my guess is that some other corporation here in America will end up buying out TikTok. I imagine Microsoft or somebody else. And at that point, then transition over.
I'm like a dinosaur when it comes to these sorts of apps. So TikTok, my understanding was that I thought TikTok was supposed to be for like 30-second jokes, like in the same way that Vine was. It is
kind of like Vine. Yeah, it was for like the Vine joke videos. It was originally for that, along with like dancing or lip syncing to a song. But it's begun to diversify beyond that point, where now people are using it to put forward arguments for different political views or religious views. So everyone else that I'm seeing the conservatives, the socialists, the Christians, the Muslims over there. For some reason, not many atheists though.
I wouldn't mind using it just as long as it's been decoupled from China, because like I don't want to shift the conversation just quite yet, but in as much as the conversation is important to keep putting atheism out there in the forefront, I think that we still have substantial problems with China as a growing power in the world. That's going to be even more of a threat in my opinion in the years to come. TikTok is from what you've shown us, Nate, a substantial platform for bad ideas to spread, and no doubt we have to something has to be done to counteract them. But with the dubiousness surrounding the platform, I'm hesitant to get an account and go on there. But I'll need more information before I make a decision. That's something to consider.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I can quell any of your concerns. I think that you have a right to be concerned. You have good reason to be concerned. So yeah, like I mentioned before, maybe just go with trying to get some kind of VPN to make yourself more secure if you want to try it out, or just wait and hopefully some other corporation here in America will end up buying out their company, and then maybe that'll make it a bit safer.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the demographics of this. The 13 through 24-year-old segment represents about 70% of the app's user base. So this is like effectively the future, basically. This is the entire
This is the
younger
future.
generation. Jesus Christ. I had no idea that this thing even existed. I always thought this was like sort of just like a meme central. I don't know. People were
I know
actually
that's the impression that I was like, it's just like the newest fad. It'll go away. No, like this is the new Twitter. This is the new YouTube.
Jesus, man. And here I am trying to focus on Twitter. Apparently, it's been TikTok this whole time. Okay, so yeah. Armin Navabi, I didn't even know he had a TikTok. Okay. I would have made fun of him before, but now I probably.
I mean, he doesn't seem to actively promote it, but I did see he has like maybe like I think 60 or so followers on there, and he has like a handful of videos.
Okay, I think Armin Navabi is, even though he's not particularly well-spoken or eloquent, I think he is one of the clearest thinkers I've ever met. So a few people where if I find myself that I disagree with him, I double check my facts to make sure that I'm not misinformed on a topic. So I'm going to try to scold him to make more videos on there.
Yeah. So that's a big one. Like the next three that I have to show off are kind of a minor in comparison to TikTok, but I think they're still worth looking into because there is a following that we can reach on there. The next one I think we should look into is, have you ever heard of Wikitubia before?
I have not.
Wikitubia is it's a website. It's part of this this company called fandom.com. It's essentially where you can make like miniature versions of Wikipedia for various fandoms. And the one for YouTube and the YouTube community is called Wikitubia. And I think that we can begin writing articles about various YouTube personalities, and that can be a way to draw more attention to them. Because a lot of people in the YouTube circles go on to Wikitubia to learn about other people. And I think, hey, we could just write articles about, whoever you think is worthwhile. And that way they can like, oh, who's this new YouTuber? Oh, and then learn more about them from the article. And then maybe that'll draw more traffic to our YouTube community. And from what I've seen along with that, with it being part of fandom, Wikitubia articles tend to have a high search rank. So if you want to, push down, less favorable articles about atheist YouTubers and bring up, more positive coverage through these Wikitubia articles, that can be a thing that we can look into as well. So a couple of examples I have here. There are actually a couple of atheist YouTubers that already do have articles written about them. So here, I'm going to open these all up individually. Is Rationality Rules. If you scroll down here, you'll see that I think, the number 4 ranked article is his Wikitubia article. And it just gives a whole bunch of information about his YouTube channel, what he talks about. And I think this is great PR for somebody. If they wanted to learn about a YouTuber, it's a good way to promote your merch, all your different shows. And then there's also ones I've seen for Apostate Prophet, for GM Skeptic. So, I think that if you wanted to have an article, let's say about yourself written on there, either you do it yourself or have someone make it for you. And that could be a good way to promote your brand.
Okay, then I actually have heard about this. I didn't know it was called Wikitubia, though. So this is interesting. So effectively create pages for popular YouTubers, and this flows in the traffic towards their channels.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the community already built into Wikitubia may discover people because of these articles being brand new and written about them. And then along with that, it's just good to have, positive coverage of yourself, showing up high in search ranks. And Wikitubia would be a great avenue to, write about yourself.
Okay. All right. So we have TikTok, which really blew my mind. You blew my mind with TikTok. And now we have Wikitubia. So these are two avenues that I would have never thought of when talking about promoting atheism. I would have just thought like the boring average, just make videos on YouTube, popularize particular arguments. I had no idea that there was this completely new avenues that we could navigate towards, and effectively, basically trying to present the arguments for the younger generation. Because if the younger generation overwhelmingly use TikTok, and Muslim and Christian apologetics are overwhelmingly on there, then there's basically a whole philosophy that the younger generation isn't being exposed to. They when they hear an argument that you can't see the brain, so therefore that it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. They're blown away by that. They don't know what the opposition's argument is. So we're effectively introducing the atheistic arguments towards them that they wouldn't have been exposed to, because that's not even on TikTok at this point.
Yeah. Now, to be clear, I think that it is still important that we have our own community here on YouTube. I mean, YouTube is still, I think, like the number one, the number 2 or number 3 ranked website in the world. So it's not a matter of like abandoning YouTube, just more, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Diversify as much as possible. Go where the popular trends are.
Okay, cool.
Well, this is also a substantial warning to, I think, in the future for any kind of activism. It's like, it's essential now. I don't know. I have no idea why I didn't think about this before, but like it seems it's definitely important to be able to check what kind of platforms that are up and coming and popular, because it's a substantial medium to pass certain messages across. And if you're not aware of that, well, there's a huge output of misinformation out there that needs to be countered. And like the more popular it gets, the more it gets out there. So TikTok and Wikitube,
Wikitubia.
These 2 platforms, Wikitubia, thank you, are really out there right now. But who knows what's going to come out in the future, and who knows, like, what might get biased if we don't keep track of these things and be able to put some kind of counterbalance in the mix.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, we have no idea where the internet will be in 5-10 years from now. So we should actively have people in our circles trying to scout and follow the latest media trends and see where people are going. I know that a couple of years back, like Snapchat was the new hip thing on the block. Now it's TikTok. Now who knows where it'll be again in 5 years from now. So yeah, just keep trying to stay relevant. Otherwise, other people will take your place. So the next one I wanted to cover was, have you ever heard of iFunny?
The meme app?
Yeah, it's like a meme website, meme app. I know, like, this is, again, like, TikTok is the big play here, but these are some smaller websites to look into, because I think they are a good way to promote some atheist memes. I've seen that Atheist Republic does a lot of, meme sharing on their social media platforms, and I think that a good place where we could break out and share some of our memes, or potentially create some brand new ones, or try to utilize like the newest, most popular memes of the time, would be through platforms like iFunny. So iFunny, from what I've seen, is like one of the most popular meme sharing sites out there. And like TikTok, it's mainly used by teens, like primarily teen boys. And I mean, like, it seems like everyone in this call, we began as teen boys online watching these atheist videos, and that kind of was our introduction. The thing about iFunny that is unfortunate is that they seem to have a kind of a subculture on there of white nationalists.
Uh-oh.
So
wow.
I'm going to be pulling up an article. I'm not sure if they're the majority on there. I'm sure they're like a fringe group on there. But white nationalists. So here's an article that I discovered recently about how iFunny became a hub for white nationalism. White nationalists have co-opted iFunny and are using it to recruit, young teen boys into white nationalist ideology. And I'm thinking, why couldn't atheists go on there and bring people away from these more toxic ideas like ethno-nationalism and bring them over to more productive ideas like secularism, humanism, utilitarianism, and, hopefully, make them further the atheist movement. So yeah, essentially you can just imagine, your typical memes are put up on there. But yeah, this is a prime example. I think that we could bring these people over to a much healthier ideology than white nationalism.
Yeah. What I'm thinking though is that if I don't know if this is the case, but if atheists got some bad rep from those cringy 9gag memes that people posted on, wouldn't we also be undergoing the same concern with iFunny? People just posting cringy atheist memes on iFunny?
Well, that's the thing. I don't think that memes in and of themselves are cringe. It's a matter of how you go about them.
Mm-hmm.
So, are you familiar with the acronym KISS?
No.
Oh, it's an abbreviation for Keep It Simple, Stupid. From what I've seen, a lot of people, like especially like in the left-wing circle of the internet, their memes are so long-winded. Where I see a lot of right-wing memes out there, they're usually very simple, straightforward, to the point, and they have a witty punchline. Now, granted, sometimes the arguments in the memes are shit, but they are funny regardless. So I think that we should try to look to, the most popular memes for inspiration and try to find ways to implement that rhetoric in a way that's to our benefit, which I'll actually be going into in just a moment.
Okay.
So yeah, along with that, according to knowyourmeme.com, a lot of popular memes have originated from iFunny, actually. So yeah, there are different fandoms on there. It mentions down at this point some different memes that have originated from iFunny. So it seems like people will go to iFunny to like fish for memes, which they will then share to their own social media. So if we can get like a meme to start trending on iFunny, we can get other people on Facebook, Twitter, or wherever to begin reposting it on our behalf to their own stuff and then make it mainstream potentially.
New avenues.
And then so those are the first three. The last one that I have in mind here is Know Your Meme. So are either of you familiar with knowyourmeme.com?
Man, I'm such a dinosaur. No, I'm not.
So yeah, Know Your Meme is kind of like a meme Wikipedia. It's a website for like documenting the latest popular memes out there, for documenting internet drama, that kind of stuff. And from what I've seen, like they will show like at the top of their website page, like what the latest, most trending memes are, of the month, of the week. So we can go on there and use it as a reference. Like, okay, this is what people are into right now. What if we try to repurpose these memes, utilize these memes to put like atheist messages inside of them, and then just like experiment with what punchline is the most effective. And I actually have an account on knowyourmeme.com right now. I don't actually have my NateTalksToYou name on there, but I do have an account on there. So I'll pull that up right now. And what I like about this website is that it seems like it's incredibly easy garner viewership to your images and everything without having any following. Like on my account right now, I don't have anyone following me. And yet I will post meme images to the different article pages they have on here. They have a little like category at the bottom of the page for images of the memes. And then people just go and look and search in there for like the newest jokes. And here's some numbers for you. Here's one about this Lego Doctor meme. This got, this got like, I think 5,000 people viewing it. It got a lot of likes on there. But the one I wanted to focus on especially was this one right here called Daily Struggle. It's like the two different buttons to pick from. This isn't the original text, mind you, but I changed it to this. Yeah. And it's like the guy has to pick which button to press, and the two buttons are obviously kind of in contradiction. They're like two conflicting views that this person would be holding, and I have to pick which one. Anyway, though, as you can see, this got like 6,000 views, and again, I have no following on here. But what I found interesting is that it seems like a lot of popular Facebook pages or Twitter accounts will go to these articles and search for jokes to share. So after having this up for only like a week or so, this is what happened. So this account just like copied and pasted the meme. It got 10,000 likes on Facebook, 5,000 shares. That's just one example, mind you. Here's a different account that also shared it.
Wow.
This one, 5,000 likes, nearly 6,000 shares. It also got shared over on Reddit. I'll pull it up too.
So you made this meme, right? And it's being shared by everybody?
I mean, I didn't make the original. I just like superimposed the text in the Trump hat onto the original version. But so then this thing caught on because people downloaded it and began resharing it to their own social media. And over here on Reddit, 13K upvotes.
Wow.
So yeah, it just seems like a lot of people will go here for inspiration. How can I get more clicks to my page? Oh, let's go on this article and find the newest meme, and then they just reshare it. So yeah, that blew up in a lot of left-wing circles. So why can't we do the exact same thing, but with a more atheist-centric meme?
That's a good question. And
Mhm.
yeah,
Kind
I
of
think,
new avenue.
I mean, without a doubt, based on the fact that I had no idea what TikTok is, you had to explain memes to me. So I had like the format. I'm definitely not the person to do this because I would have to completely recalibrate my brain to, I don't know what the age group for this is. I'm not even like that old. I'm 23. I should know this stuff, but I've
I'm
just been,
25 actually. I guess I mean I have more of like a YouTube background. I mean, I know some of this is kind of esoteric, so yeah, it's no worries. But yeah, I just recommend I can give you more pointers in the future for like how to like get into these communities and like how to adapt their kind of humor.
Mhm. Yeah, but this is something that I've never thought about. So I'm definitely gonna have to marinate on this because whenever someone asks me how to promote atheism, my avenue was always very just conventional, right? Well, use street epistemology or try to, instead of like dunking on people on Twitter, try to do something more like on letter.wiki. That would have been my go-to solutions. I had no idea that there was this completely new department that we could explore in which the younger generation, that's where they're congregating. And I don't I don't think that we should be like indoctrinating them or anything like that or trying to brainwash them, but rather present an argument that very obviously isn't being presented like on TikTok, right? That is very overwhelmingly religious, it seems.
Hmm. Now, I just want to say I do think that street epistemology is an incredibly effective way at changing minds, but it seems to be more effective on an individual level.
Right.
I think on a more group collective level, engaging in these memes, engaging in short snippets, engaging in maybe some more edgy rhetoric, that can be effective.
Hmm.
So yeah, just like
Especially on the
modify your
branding
tactics
and
for different avenues.
yeah.
Yeah, it seems like for YouTube, lengthier content, like at least 10 minutes long, is the ideal when it comes to YouTube. But over on TikTok, they're more in like, quick sound bites, funny punchlines. That's the kind of avenue they're going for over there.
Hmm.
So that's pretty much the end when it comes to websites to try out. So the last thing I want to point out is more of like a new strategy. So like I mentioned before, it seems like some of the more prominent atheists on YouTube right now have a much more civil, clean-cut persona. While that's great, while that's awesome, I think that we can try engaging in more provocative, edgy tactics again. As long as we have well-spoken, confident people who know how to engage in effective rhetoric, are as long as the kinds of people are doing it, I think we'll be fine.
Hmm.
So I'm sure that you're both familiar with people like Steven Crowder and Milo Yiannopoulos and Caitlin Bennett,
Oh
right?
yes.
Right.
The conservative movement has been incredibly effective when it comes to doing this stuff, engaging in speeches at universities, movement, riling up the crowd. People like Caitlin Bennett, Gun Girl, I think that she brought like an AR-15 to her university. I'm not saying we should do the same thing, but just look at them for inspiration. Look at them like, how in their situation did being edgy, how did being provocative work for them? How can we try to modify these tactics in a more atheistic lens?
Hmm.
So, the closest example that I can think of right now of an atheistic secular provocateur would be, oh, before I go to that, here are a couple of reasons for why I think these people are effective. I think that for the most part, a lot of them are funny, they're charismatic, they're persuasive. I think a lot of them speak to people's interests, and again, they trigger the libs, as they say. They make the opposition look bad. But moving forward anyway, the closest example I can think of an atheist engaging in this kind of provocative behavior would be the Satanic Temple. I'm sure you're both familiar
Right.
with them.
Oh yeah.
So a couple of examples of their provocative behavior has been the Baphomet statue. They had one of their members do the Satanic Prayer during some kind of council meeting. They created a thing called After School Satan, where it's like children after school can learn about Satanism, learn about the philosophy, and each of these activities led to massive backlash. You would see videos of these Christians getting so angry, shouting down the crowd, just like trying to do anything they can to cope with Satanism being introduced into their community. At the end of the day, though, what's funny is that like the satanic philosophy that this guy's promoting is they're not like encouraging drinking blood. They're just saying, hey, be a good, nice person. That's like that's the basis of this brand of Satanism. It seems like.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to be showing off a couple of videos in just a moment here. Here we have from Vice News, them doing like a miniature documentary sorts about the temple. This video got 3 million views, got loads of likes, and this is a lot of exposure for that group.
Mm-hmm.
Why can't groups like the Thinking Atheist, for example, do the exact same thing and get a bunch of attention? Or here's an example of someone getting triggered, let's say. Here we have this Christian guy reacting to the Baphomet statue and shouting down the guys up on stage. I mean, I gotta admit, it's playing dirty, but it is effective.
Right.
So that's a summary of everything I have to show off.
Interesting how you bring that up, because like, we get into conversations with our friend Armin at times, and I think there's a community of people out there who ask him like, "Hey, why do you have to be so provocative and edgy?" And I think he made the statement once that sometimes he does that because that's what gets results. That's what brings people in to actually listen to him, because they actually want to hear what he has to say, for good or ill. And he often ends up engaging in audience that way. I mean, I kind of think of it as a Muhammad Ali strategy, where he would just talk so much trash, and that's how he would hype his fights. He would garner the publicity that way, that people would either come to see him kick ass or have him come there to see him get his ass kicked. But that's what draws attention. So that's it's something to consider.
Mm-hmm. I mean, when you think about it, Christopher Hitchens was kind of like an early example of his provocative behavior. He would engage in these like public debates. He would go on to various talk shows and news shows, and he was not afraid to be a bit edgy. He would insult religion. He would happily insult the people he was talking to. And I mean, looking back, he has like a massive legacy behind him because of how provocative he could be, and not only provocative but persuasive at the same time.
Right. This reminds me of the quote that was circulated around, where ridicule can help illuminate the reality of a situation. It can help show just how crazy something is. But as you said, you need to be skilled at it. So someone like Christopher Hitchens was able to use ridicule and was able to use the type of personality that he had to his advantage, because he was so incredibly witty. He was so incredibly well read, and he knew how to perform, basically. But when put in the wrong hands of someone who isn't well trained in this field, he can just come off looking like an asshole, and people aren't going to be very convinced by it. So there's an art to it, right? There's an art to using ridicule in the way that will manage to get people to either be like, wow, he has a point, or be like, yeah, the opposition is kind of silly. It is kind of funny in that way, isn't it? So there's you gotta handle this tool properly.
Now, I'm not sure if I'm personally the right person to take up that position, but I think we should be looking for a new Christopher Hitchens, our own Stephen Crowder, our own Milo Yiannopoulos to take up that position for us and hopefully further popularize atheism.
Yeah, the person who always comes to mind when I think of like the next Christopher Hitchens or the next Sam Harris, I think the next Sam Harris is someone like Cosmic Skeptic, who's so incredibly well-spoken. He's incredibly intelligent. He knows how to respond to a charged question. So there was a very popular clip of someone asking him, I forget what the question is, but he said something along the lines of like, where does morality come from, or something like that. And it was a very charged question, and he basically recognized how charged it was, and he said, well, you're going to need to be a lot more specific. So he's very quick-witted about that. But he's not into the whole ridicule game, right? He's not in the whole snap back at the thing. So that mantle has to be taken up by someone else. And so, yeah, the question is, who would that be? Who is witty enough to the point where, and articulate enough to the point where he can resemble Christopher Hitchens in the same way that Cosmic Skeptic can resemble Sam Harris?
Because from what I've seen, a lot of the atheists that I see right now on YouTube, I mean, sure, they get decent viewership, but they're not getting like mainstream media attention. The Satanic Temple, they have gotten interviewed on BBC News. They have gotten interviewed on Fox News. If we want to reach the common man, we need to break out of the internet. The internet's great, but we need to get in front of more eyes than just that.
Yeah, I mean, even if we were to go by Twitter, right? Twitter is probably the most popular social media platform out there. I could be wrong. TikTok is probably blowing it out of the water, actually.
It is
But
popular.
yeah, Twitter is very popular, right? But when you look at the metrics, it's not representative of anything. It's not representative of the general population. And it's not even representative of Twitter. When polls came out and show that most people on Twitter are pretty centrist, actually, like center left, it's always the tweets that are like far left or far right that get tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of likes. So Twitter's not even representative of itself. So how do we move this? How do we shift this conversation from Twitter or from these esoteric websites that we all use to the more general public audience, right?
Yeah, and I think our best option right now is to just follow in the footsteps of what the conservatives have been doing for quite a while now, quite effectively, which is to just make a scene, play a bit dirty, try to go into religious parts of the country, make a scene, challenge their ideas, and then get media coverage that way. I'm not sure what to do specifically, but maybe just try to, take tips from what the Satanic Temple has been doing and reappropriate that to our own benefit.
Right. And so that's the question, right? I think left-wing popularizers, sort of, liberal commentators, have done this in a way where YouTube, I mean, if you think YouTube is conservative now, just check out 5 years ago. 5 years ago, YouTube was like hardcore, conservative. But now you have the entry points of like Vosh. Vosh is socialist. He's now very popular on YouTube. Same with Destiny. Destiny's not socialist or nowhere near as far left as Vosh is. He's more like center left, but he represents at least the very socially liberal side of that spectrum. And so the liberal side of the conversation seems to be infiltrating the conservative YouTube sphere. So now YouTube is nowhere near as conservative as it was before then. And YouTube was also sort of very atheistic, I think. I mean, this is just from my own personal experience. When I started getting into the atheist community, YouTube was overwhelmingly atheist from my perspective. And that seems to be the case still, but just no one's talking about it anymore, right? No one's like, very few people are really leading the charge for atheism still. Now people are either talking about culture or they're talking about politics. Now it's like the conversation shifted. So how do we maintain that conversation?
Yeah, as far as maintaining it, it seems like people just got kind of burned out. The topic of atheism was discussed on YouTube for many years, and people just got bored of it, and now they want to move on. However, atheism's been in the dark, it seems like, on YouTube for a while now. I think it can become popular again. I don't see any reason why, in this time where we're seeing a rise of evangelicals again in this country, why we can't, make atheism a hip, trendy topic on YouTube again. Or just online in general.
Yeah, and it should. Like, as I said, the United States is still like 72% religious. This conversation is not done. You can make the argument that in a country like Belgium, which is the majority are atheists, or like Denmark, you can make the argument that it's not needed there. I still think it is needed because, I mean, it's still, we're barely looking at numbers like 50 to 60%. So it's clearly still needed. But you could make that argument more so than the United States, where it's barely like, what's the percentage of nuns? Like 13% nuns. And even then, many of them are spiritual. So it's still something to be concerned about, especially since people are now talking about whether or not it could be used as a social tool. That's, as I said before, that's the conversation. Whether we're looking at Paul Bloom or Jonathan Haidt or Jordan Peterson, now it's, or the Weinstein brothers, now it's the conversation is about as a social tool. And to me, I'm still on the side of when you look at secularized countries, religion is not one of the ingredients necessary to uphold secular enlightenment values that'll increase the well-being of a society. It's nowhere near part of the equation, in my opinion. So that conversation still needs to be had.
But there just seems to be a huge problem in the atheist community itself, because they've gotten so split over the last couple of years because of the social justice movement. And not only that, but there seems to be a view still, even after Ben Affleck had his run-in with Sam Harris on Bill Maher's show, that has all religions equally, and there's a clash between there almost seems to be a split in the idea that whether you should be promoting atheism equally across all religions and not paying more attention to one religion or another, especially when it's when some of the tenets of one religion are far more fundamentalist than another. Like examples would include Islam and Hinduism, and it still hides between that veneer of you can't criticize this person's culture. So I'm very, very much in favor of continuing the work of the New Atheist and extending it even into other cultures. But right now, it seems to have lost a lot of its steam because of the split that you have to respect all cultures, which is just baloney.
Yeah, as far as that goes, I'm really not sure how to mend that tear in the atheist community. I'm familiar with the whole atheism plus movement that gained a bit of steam around, I think, 2012, 2013. I know like the YouTuber Thunderfoot covered that actively on his YouTube channel back in the day. Yeah, there seems to be like mainly two sides to atheism online, at least. There's the more progressive wing, and then you have the more libertarian wing. And while we both agree, that God isn't real, there's no strong evidence for a God. When it comes to other politics outside of that, we still have this divide. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, as far as coalition building goes, that can be difficult to mend.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind. Like Armin Avabi said, like the split is actually a good thing because it shows that we're not monolithic in a thought, right? We don't have our own tribe here. We can all think differently, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
inclined to agree with him. My only concern is that the woke phenomenon is spreading into some people's religious views, where some people are. I remember listening to a podcast with three popular YouTubers. I won't name them. I can tell you who they were after the video ends, but they were basically saying that we shouldn't be so atheistic around black people because they need religion to cope with institutional racism. And I'm totally willing to talk about institutional racism and all that jazz, but like that that is clearly an infringement on the conversation around atheism where we shouldn't even talk about it. Like we need to talk about it. That's still like that's the
Mm-hmm.
one thing that we should at least all agree on. But but their other viewpoints, their other ideologies is seeping into the way that they react about the conversation with atheism, which normally I wouldn't mind, but it's not even a matter of thinking about it differently. It's a matter of not even talking about it at all.
Yeah, the thing about the different sides of atheism, the more progressive or libertarian or liberal side of atheism, is that I think it's totally fine for us to disagree politically, but at the end of the day, we should all be willing to work together. We can say, hey, we disagree when it comes to maybe climate change. We can disagree when it comes to taxation, whatever topic you can think of. But in spite of all of that, we should all be able to come together and work on this one issue. And it
Mhm.
seems like some people just are not willing to do that.
Nate, I have a
Yeah.
question for you about like the about criticizing religion in itself. How do you feel about going after religious liberals as opposed to dealing with the fundamentalists? I mean, confession here, like I'm an atheist, but I still attend a very, very, very liberal Christian church in which if you walked inside there, you talked to any of the members, you overall would not be able to tell the difference between them and a secular humanist. I mean, in my opinion, like I think it's an entirely different ballgame because on one hand, you have a church body, a quote unquote religious body, so to speak, that have ditched so many of the practices and scriptures that are just that are homophobic, sexist, racist, or whatever. But they do so through a completely disingenuous reading of their text, which in a lot of ways I'm okay with, because who can argue with the overall result in which you've thrown out a lot of the fundamentalist practices which are harmful. But
Hmm.
then again, we circle back around to fundamentalism, and those are where the major problems are. And you see this entirely new infusion of verbal tricks, obfuscations that religious liberals just throw into the mix that really, really muddle up the waters. I mean, Sam Harris talks about this in The End of Faith, and um, but what do we do about that with religious liberals on one end of the spectrum, and that are essentially humanist, but they actually throw unintentionally or otherwise a cover for fundamentalists? Like, two-pronged question, like what place do religious liberals have And how should religious liberals be criticized if their values are largely in line with modernity, with the shield they give to fundamentalism?
It's kind of a difficult question, but speaking personally, I don't view the more liberal religious people as being a major threat to atheism. I kind of view religious liberals as being a declawed version of Christianity. In a lot of ways, you might argue they're a stepping stone towards atheism. You know, they're going further and further away from that fundamentalism, getting closer and closer to just being us, but still believing in God. Humanists, pretty secular, but they still have not let go of God yet. So they are still a cause for concern because, for all we know, they could move back towards that conservatism. But I think we need to focus our energy on the primary threat, which is that more evangelical side of Christianity, the more fundamentalist side of Islam. Because once that's no longer an issue, then we can focus more of our attention on the softer, more liberal brand of Christianity.
Yeah, it's always interesting because for me, I agree. Obviously, in a world between fundamentalist religious people versus liberal religious people, the fundamentalists are like 100 times more dangerous. But what concerns me is always the sort of historical inaccuracy and mental gymnastics that are employed in order to try and interpret these Abrahamic texts in a liberal fashion. So one of my interests is religious history. So whether we're talking interpreting Jesus as an apocalyptic figure versus the one in the Synoptic Gospels, versus the one in the Gospel of John. Synoptic Gospels is the apocalyptic one. It always sort of irritates me when you have a hardcore liberal interpretation in which they view Jesus as a socialist, pretty much, because that I think what we have here through these Abrahamic texts is a fascinating look into the history and the philosophies of the people who lived at that time in Palestine. This is an amazing historical record right here. And in the nicest way possible, we're like wasting our time trying to warp it in such a way that fits with contemporary values. I think it'd be so much more interesting and so much more fascinating if we looked at it honestly, because we have a lens here. How did the people at the time think when the Gospel of John was written? What were their philosophies? That's fascinating to me. And it's funny, I would sometimes, because of this, I was like, in my religious studies class at university, because of that, I tended to be more critical of liberal interpretations of scripture. And so when I had a conversation with my professor and I told him I'm like an atheist, I'm a liberal atheist, he's like, I thought you were a conservative this whole time because like because of how like, antagonistic you were. I was like, oh no, not even close. They're so much more dangerous. They're a much bigger concern of mine, but it's just a small aggravation that I have that admittedly it probably shouldn't be as big of an aggravation as it is, but it's like, that academic in me that cares about understanding the history and the philosophy of the people at that time.
I suppose the best way of handling the more liberal branch of Christianity would be in the debate format. So we've already mentioned Vosh a couple times here. I think if we had our own version of that for atheism, we could invite liberal Christians onto a stream, and because their view of Christianity is so in conflict with what the Bible actually teaches, it would be pretty easy to make them look bad in a conversation.
Yeah,
because they have to go through so many gymnastics, they look foolish. At which point they only have one of two options: either own up that, yeah, my book is fucked up, but I'm okay with it still, or say, you know what, maybe I should abandon this text. This is stupid.
Oh yeah, this was actually fantastic. So, want to thank you so much for being on the podcast and really enlightening us with things that we had no idea about. I had no idea that there was this completely new direction that we could propel our activism towards. So I want to thank you for coming on, really informing us about things that we had no idea about, and giving us your perspective on topics. So thank you for coming on, man. It's been an honor.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Nate.
Yeah, I just want to see atheism get back to where it was a couple of years ago. I want to see it become a mainstream front back on the internet again. And I think we can do it as long as we all put in the effort, as long as we recruit the right people to take up these positions. We can do it for sure. So is it cool, by the way, if I promote my different outlets and stuff online?
Oh, absolutely. Go ahead and do that. And at the beginning of the video, I do a little intro in which I also do the promotion, since most people like click off the podcast like 30 minutes in. So I did it. So yeah, but go ahead, promote whatever you want.
So yeah, primarily I post content on YouTube. I make videos about various political topics as well as, of course, atheism. Along with that, I have an account on Facebook, Twitter. I have one on TikTok too. I haven't used it yet, but I will be pretty soon. And along with that, I'm also on Patreon, and I will be making a brand new video in the next week or so. It's going to be a response to some of the negative feedback I received when I was debunking arguments from Ben Shapiro. So I got some backlash from that,
Yeah.
but I'm going to push right back again.
I saw the video last
right.
night. It was good.
Thanks. Yeah. So in the future, I want to challenge Ben Shapiro on other topics, whether it be transgenderism or climate change, because there's a lot of material that I can work with there.
Yeah. Once more, thanks for coming to the podcast. We hope to see you again, man. This was fun.
All right. Yeah. Likewise. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode. There's a lot to unpack in this one. There's certainly a whole slew of people that are unfamiliar with the arguments for atheism. If the idea that you not being able to see your brain is on the same level as you not being able to see God is compelling to anyone, that presents a clear problem in thinking deeply about these issues. This is a large portion of people that need to be presented with the arguments against religion. Because, by God, if that's what they're convinced by, then we're in some serious trouble with the future generation. Regardless, I really enjoyed this conversation with Nate. I was impressed by how well researched he was on the topic of promoting atheism. Be sure to give him some love on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and TikTok, I guess. Our next podcast will be with James Lindsay. His book, Cynical Theories, written alongside Helen Pluckrose, has just come out, and we basically talk about his book and how critical methods has gotten into the academy. Anyways, thanks for listening to this episode, and I hope to see you in the next one.